to be here. Good luck. We'll see you at the All-Star game.
You gonna play over there one of these days?
All right. Oh, you gonna get him in the driver's seat, or you gonna go right there?
Well, drivers, and then my head out of the way.
Definitely get it real close. Take one there if you like. Take one picture of the vertical right here. Okay. I think we're going to win. Well, the Pacers didn't take it because they got two that I like. Another guy who filled in. Yeah, grab onto whatever you do, but taking one picture, do me a favor. Whatever else you take, real loud, just don't let that scare you. It's, just,
all right,
it's automatic. You. It's just automatic. You can't help yourself.
Watch your head.
Watch your head.
Yeah.
Oh!
He's right. Ooh.
Sit there where you want, honey.
Yeah, someone have a seat right there. Oh my gosh, these are. Oh, sitting in the driver's seat, maybe. Oh my goodness.
It's safe.
Woo. Driving the bus. Who's that guy? You can't get on the bus.
Oh, come on. Yeah, he's still going.
This thing is so cramped. What's up, guys? We have a very special video today. We are in Mattoon, Illinois at the VIP Cinemas celebrating the 40th anniversary of the movie Hoosiers. It's going to be really cool. They got a free screening of the movie, and some of the vehicles are in the parking lot. The bus that the Huskers take to the state championship game, Coach Norman Dale's car. It's really cool. And we're gonna head inside and check out some of the memorabilia they've got. Now we got Coach Norman Dale's car from the movie. Just imagine Gene Hackman driving this car.
But it makes sense.
All right, thank you. Oh my goodness, I don't know if I'm gonna fit in here. Wow.
Don't worry too much about that door. It doesn't work right.
Oh, okay. Oh, can we close it? Oh, wow. Look at this. Gene Hackman's car from the movie Hoosiers. This is unreal. I'm in the driver's seat. This is nuts.
I just thought that was a neat little thing that's a neat scene in the movie. Did you want the movie theater in front, or did you want this
stuff in the background. I can do that. I'll try to cut it.
Wow. 1985. Wow. A little miniature of the bus we were just in outside. Check out this movie theater. They got drunk Dennis Hopper. Got Dennis Hopper and Barbara Hershey. Looks like these are some of the screen used jerseys. This poster looks like it's signed by the cast and crew of the movie. There's Gene Hackman there right above the word Hoosiers. Barbara Hershey.
Project for people to how to visit stores better. So yeah, that's what Amy was telling me about. I didn't have to get that morning stuff. I need to get that solid.
Okay, do we have anybody that wants to start out with a question for Angelo? I can bring you a mic here.
Some of the films or some of the books I've read about Hoosiers is that the Milan team, the way they're perceived, is a massive underdog in the movie against South Bend. one of the things I read is that actually it was a little bit dramatized. That Milan was actually loaded. They was a little bit. Was there the gap between the two was a more competitive matchup? Was there truth to that, or was because in the movie you get the idea like they had almost no chance of winning, but in fact Milan had a very strong team, and that the gap wasn't as great as it was portrayed in the movie.
Well, depends on what you mean by gap. Okay, this is again, this is not a documentary, not a docudrama, right? The team, Milan's team, obviously was very good. I mean, they wouldn't have won the state championship. However, I don't know, you're not questioning this, but you're asking. There's a difference between the whole point of teams like Milan that had a total of like 100 kids in their entire high school, okay? When they would go up against teams like Muncie Central was the team that they beat in the state championship, they had an enrollment of 2,200, okay? Usually what happens in the semi-state, or the sectionals, or regional, semi-state, is teams like Milan can't survive because they're drawing from a pool that's so much smaller. True in every level of sport, and college and high school, and so these kind of stories do occasionally happen. They are what they call the miracle of Milan. There was a Hebron was a school here in Illinois that had the same kind of thing. So these small schools would go up against these really big schools. They don't do that anymore because they're so rare. The Milans are so rare that they go to class basketball. So they're playing teams with the same enrollment, high school, same pool that they're bringing. So it's taken the magic out of the state tournament though, because you're not getting these upsets anymore. But in terms of the talent of the team, the other thing you keep in mind this, which is they are a unique team, not just in terms of the size of the school, but the size of the team. The tallest guy in that team was 6'1". He was their center, okay? And what we recreated was the South Bend team that had, their front line was 6'4", 6'5", 6'3". They had a guy end up playing the pros on that team. But more importantly, that we didn't, too much basketball was the problem we had. And I didn't even write this, but they had a semifinal game. You know, when you get to the state championship, you have to play two games. You have to play the afternoon game, the final game. In the afternoon game, they played Crispus Attucks. Crispus Attucks had Oscar Robertson as a sophomore, 6'5" guard. They had a 6'8" center played for Purdue, another 6'7" guard, forward, who played for Loyola, and Milan beat them by 20, 6-1. So that's how good that team. And by the way, that Crispus Attucks team never lost another game for the next 2 years. They won 2 straight state championships. And our way to honor him and honor them, that is Crispus Attucks, is that the coach on the South Bend team, again a fictional team, was not Ray Kraft, I'm blanking on his name. Ray Crow, thank you. And Bailey Robertson, who's Oscar's brother, was the assistant coach. So, and the other thing was we some people blasted us for having the first time you saw blacks, in the film is when they played the final team, like demonizing. But that's really, when they played Muncie Central, that was a mixed team. There were like four black players on the team that played significantly. And of course Attucks when they played them in the afternoon. So, unfortunately in Southern Indiana there were very few black people, and they rarely played teams with black players in Southern Indiana.
Who else has a question?
So there's a developing story in Wilmington right now with the Hoosiers football team going from the old time losing its program to actually winning a national championship over the last year.
I don't know if everybody heard that, but you said there's another story developing in Bloomington about losing his football team going to Well, that story is not developed. It has developed. It is over. It's not developing. Okay.
National champion.
Sounds like a great project.
I've been asked, I can't tell you how many times I've been asked about this and about my interest in doing a movie about the team and so on. And in fact, I've been approached by, I can't tell you how many people. It's been insane, but I put it to rest, and I put it, the athletic director in Indiana is a good friend of mine, Scott Dolson, and he called me and said, I'm getting all these calls too, I don't know what to do, and so on. I said, first of all, it's not a dramatic feature film. Maybe 20 years from now, you'll try to recreate it, but you can't do it now. It's too vivid, too real, too specific, too visceral, and we just lived it. We're not going to relive it through casting versions of Fernando, for example. That would be impossible. And I said, I think it would make a good documentary, but the only way it would make a good documentary is if we could dig deeper into the stories behind the stories, because Big Ten Network has enough clips. They have enough they can do their own documentary, based on their material. But if you're going to do a bigger documentary that goes deeper, you need Coach Sig and the players to spend time with a documentary filmmaker. And I said I could bring somebody in. And he said, well, let me call, and we can talk about it further. And Scott called Coach Sig and said, no way. He said, this is interesting. Okay, this gives you an indication. I mean, I follow coaching really. I'm fascinated with this guy, of course. He said, I'm not a rear view mirror guy. He said, I'm not wasting 1 minute on sitting down in front of a camera talking about what happened in the past. I'm totally 100% focused on our next practice, our next game, our next season, and so are my players. So, no participation in this project. So there is no project. I mean, someone will make some version of it. I think Fernando has his own family has made a deal with some company to do their story, but I'm not going to be involved in anything like that. I'm not a documentary filmmaker. I just enjoy it. To me, last season was the greatest sports experience I've ever enjoyed in my lifetime. And I've been to 3 national championships in basketball. Nothing like this. Of course, when you have Bob Knight as your coach, you're kind of expected to get there. No one saw this one coming at all. That's what made it so unique and wonderful. Yes. Go ahead.
Well, I think okay. I thought it was interesting that, and I am a retired journalist, and I cover news and sports. Maybe some here, maybe they'll throw something at me. I used to work at the Mattoon Journal-Gazette, and I worked at other area papers, Hermaker, and I'm sitting here by a journalism legend, Brian Nielsen. But anyway, I thought it was interesting how you had shots on the level of the floor, and that sort of created sort of a ballet kind of, with some of the slow motion, a ballet kind of element. Because when I was shooting sports, high school sports, I would be on the floor, and everybody thought I was a little crazy moving around. I just didn't sit it under the basket, and sometimes I would get some of these motions that were sort of interesting. I guess that was. Did you write that into the script as well? I mean, was that sort of scripted, or was that the cinematographer said, "Hey, let's try this method," or what did you do?
So we, one of the things that I was very aware of, people point to me as the writer. I don't think of myself as a writer. I think of myself as a filmmaker, and part of constructing words on a paper to communicate with my best friend directed the film. So we talked about this quite a bit before we ended up getting out there and shooting it. And we wanted to create a different personality, a different character for each one of the games, so they just didn't all run together. So stylistically, there were some subtle changes from this and that, but we actually shot with 2 or 3 cameras, and then 5 cameras on the last day. And most of the long shots we just threw out, because they're just, you can't follow it, it's not the same thing. And there's a sense of being there and really being close to the play. You want to see their faces. you want to see the grunts and the groans and the pushes and you want to feel part of it. You want the audience to feel part of it, and that's really what we did. Now, when it came to we were pretty careful with the final game that we wanted to shoot it like the NFL film style, which is always off the floor, but use telephoto lenses to get a sense of compression, but you're never really in the game, in terms of, I'm not like we're not with the Steadicam running along with a player. Maybe a couple of shots here and there, but we allowed Steadicams in other games. So it was, stylistically, we were very careful about each game being a little bit different.
So the filming location for Hickory in the movie was a small town named New Richmond, which, if anyone's ever been there before, is literally just an intersection in the middle of nowhere. And I was wondering, did you have any say-so or hand in picking the filming locations, or?
Well, part of being a filmmaker, that's one of the important aspects of filming. Yeah, when people always ask me, did you have any say-so in the casting or the film locations? That's what a filmmaker does. It's extremely important. Location, finding the right locations, and in this case, we had to find all our locations within 50 miles of Indianapolis, because that's where the crew base was. If it was further away, then we'd have problems with overtime, because it would take too long to drive there and back if it was longer than 1 hour drive. And we only found one place that actually had everything, and that was Waveland, Indiana. Okay, Waveland had the gym, they had the town square, and then they had the school. But they were tearing down the gym, and we asked they were doing it that fall that we were going to shoot. We said, could you extend it to another year? And I think they looked at us like we weren't serious, or that somehow we were some bullshit artist, but they said no, and so we had to do what was ultimately a composite Hickory, which we shot the exteriors in that city. Yeah, it is there were more businesses there at that time when we shot than there are now. I don't know why it's been totally abandoned, but yeah, that was the exterior. That was the town that he drove into and the barbershop. And but the school was in Nineveh, which is outside of Camp Atterbury in the south, and then the Hoosier gym was in Nicetown.
Anyone else? Tony?
I'll try not to make this long. As the screenwriter, as you're writing this and the inspirational quotes that came out of this movie, do those come as you're writing it or as you're filming it? Do you tweak them? And what does it make you feel as you see people wearing them and still repeating them 40 years later? And lastly, did you have a cameo as one of the referees? Because I thought I saw you out there.
No, you didn't. It was a running joke between David and I that I tried to dress as a school teacher once, and he would kick me out of every time. And I did the same thing in Rudy. I showed up one day as a priest, and nothing. I could never he would never allow me on camera. So at any rate, let's see, going through your questions, everything, with a few exceptions, I mean, you always tweak a script. For the most part, the dialogue that I wrote is from, when we started, the same dialogue that ended up in the movie. There are some actors that like to change dialogue, and there's some that respect the writer if they come from the theater, because you can't change a single word in the theater without the permission of the author. And Gene came from that school, and he was not easy to work with, especially he gave the director a hard time, but with me and the words, he was unbelievably respectful. And I was a first-time writer. He was like this Academy Award winner, and I learned a lot from him. I mean, one of the things, he would change a word here and there, but more than anything, he would point out a line here or there said, you know, I don't really need to say this. I can act it. Just put that camera on my face and you'll see what I'm, you know, much more powerful what's left unsaid than what is said oftentimes. So he was of the belief that you try to avoid as a actor to describe how you feel as much as possible, and you have to behave more than anything else. As far as tweaking, we would tweak. Now, you know, on the other hand, Barbara Hershey wanted to change every one of her lines. We didn't allow her to change anything because every one of her attempts were terrible. So she had a tin ear. Yeah, you tweak along the way. Now, Dennis Hopper was a totally different story. Dennis had done a lot of drugs and alcohol over his time, okay? And this is the first time he'd worked in any substantial part in about 10 years. And he had a lot of brain cells that were not working, you know, at optimal condition. So he couldn't remember his lines oftentimes. And so sometimes a lot of that stuff, like when he was talking about, I got married in that suit and everything, he was just throwing out stuff. He was just like, he was like, I don't think I wrote that line. But, and there were times where he just would blank. And the one thing you mentioned about things that you wrote on t-shirts, well, I mean, it was a miracle this movie ever got made. And we kept on being told that it wasn't going to get released nationally because the distributor didn't like the movie, they didn't like the title, there was nothing about it they liked. And so the fact that it was successful at all was a shock to our system. And the fact that it has sustained in popular culture as long as it has is a continuing amazement to both David and I. And, you know, the fact that the Hoosier Gym exists like a museum for the film and they sell those t-shirts and stuff with those lines in the movie. Yeah, it's sort of mind-boggling. You never set out to do something like that. You just set out to survive, you know, your first attempt to make a movie. But I will say, thank you. But I'm going to give you one example of a combination of those two questions, which is that there was a time where Dennis had to finally get that team when he finally got it all together, and he called the picket fence, and there was a line that I wrote. All of a sudden, I blanked out on the line because it's been a long time. He couldn't think of the line that I wrote, and he was like, we waited, and he finally said, "Okay, boys, don't get caught watching the paint dry." And I remember Dave and I looking at it and said, "What does that mean? Where did that come from?" And he came over and he said, "Hey, sorry guys." I said, "What?" He said, "My dad always used to say that to me." He said, "Well, I thought it kind of felt like it worked at that time, but if it doesn't, I'll go back and do a line." He said, "We like it. Go back and do it again." So now it's on t-shirts. Yeah, thanks, Dennis. That was his writing. Okay, who else?
You guys had to have a lot of extras in the basketball sequences as well as the crowd. Did you look at the physique of the athlete back then was completely different than today versus, did you give that some consideration? Was it real difficult to find?
The physique of the actors? Yes, we did. Yeah, we couldn't have a really kind of like buffed out guy remember this team is 6'1", they're kind of, they were all athletic, but they were athletic when people didn't work out. That kind of pure athleticism. And yeah, the look of the field, the physiognomy, the look of the player, the actor that we were going for, and their basketball skill. It was a combination of all these things, and of course their ability not to act, because none of them were actors except one, but their ability to relax in an environment where they had to be themselves. So we had a kind of a big audition, a cattle call, so to speak, in Indianapolis, and about over 1,000 people showed up. And we picked them first on their ability to play and their look. And then it was like 75 of them, and then we brought them to our offices, and then we got them in groups, and we just had them improvise and told them who their characters were, even though we didn't know which character was which. And we kind of narrowed it down. We started matching personalities with the characters that I wrote. And it's uncanny how similar all these guys were. I mean, for example, the guy who's really religious, you know, he's very religious to this day. And the one thing that was different was Ollie. Ollie could play, man. That guy could shoot it. He was really maybe one of the best shooters. So he had to learn how to play bad basketball. He suffered through that experience. So.
Have you ever thought about doing like a mini-series or another movie about like Brad Stevens and his journey of where he went and how he took Butler from the wee beginnings, even though he picked it up through Thad Matta and then finally got his way all the way to the Boston Celtics? I think that would be something that would be really cool to see, and everything with all his connections, especially since his wife was working at Eli Lilly and basically supporting him through the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, I mean, this is how old I am. Brad's dad is a friend of mine. Okay, I went to school with him. Brad's dad played on IU's football team back in 71. And, you know, I knew Brad when he was an assistant, and I can still call him a friend. You know, I think it's a documentary. I don't know if I wouldn't want to render it as a feature film. I just don't think there probably is inherent. The one thing about creating this whole cloth like I did, I had the freedom to create all these conflicts within the context of the characters and the externals and the town and so on. Whereas, you know, Brad's kids were such great kids. Every one of those guys, they were awesome kids. You know that if you followed those teams, right? So it's like, you know, without conflict, you have no drama. External. See, everything that they face, the underdog faces external drama, but not internal drama.
Well, that was definitely awesome. I didn't expect there to be a Q&A panel there at the end. I got to talk to the writer, Angelo Pizzo. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Maybe it's Pizzo. I'm not sure. But, wow, that was just really cool. Make sure you check out my next video. We are going to go take a look at the filming locations 40 years later.